I'm going to invite Dave Eisenman to come on up. Dave is the Director of Instructional Technology and Media Services for the Minnetonka Public Schools. He and his wife have been at Westwood for 9 years, and they have 4 children. His wife, Nikki, in fact, plays piano for our choir and orchestra. You know her better than you know him. But he is making a difference, not just for Minnetonka Public Schools. You're going to hear how he's making a difference all around the Twin Cities and even around the state of Minnesota, and I think even beyond the way this thing is going right now. There's momentum and trajectory. Would you welcome Dave? And we're going to have a few moments of conversation together. Dave, why don't you start out by talking a little bit about what you do as an instructional advisor or director to what the school system and the media services. What is that job all about? And you may have seen Dave because he's been here a couple of times with a cyber safety class, and this is what's spreading all around the state of Minnesota, and he's the designer of it. And where did that come from? So a little bit about what you do and cyber safety, how did that come into your radar?
Well, I've been with Minnetonka Schools for 20 years. I started off as a classroom teacher, and when I started off, there was no director of instructional technology. And over those past 12 years, we've really seen this explosive growth of technology that's available to all of us, to the schools as well. And so my day-to-day job is helping the students and teachers in Minnetonka use technology in their classrooms, use it to enhance instruction. And one of the things that probably took place about 10 years ago or so, there's this website called MySpace. Has anyone heard of MySpace? Remember that? Maybe you had an account. And we started noticing what students were doing in this social networking world as it first kind of came to the forefront. And there were really no adults in that world at that time. And so I started working with some of the staff in Minnetonka to talk to our students and parents about this new social media technology and how kids could interact with one another safely and appropriately and positively. And that's really, as you said, kind of exploded around the state. Over the past 8 years, I've spoken in about 75 different school districts to about 40,000 students. So
it's kind of a scary proposition. There were no digital boundaries. It was just a world being explored. And in fact, most of us were digital immigrants, which you are too.
Yes. Yep.
He does not look like a digital immigrant. He looks like a digital native to me, and he acts like a digital native, but he is a digital immigrant. And you see how it has clearly, we've just needed adult presence and these digital boundaries that are now percolating. And I know just as a pastor of a local church, the last 8 years and what it means to lead in the church has profoundly changed because of technology. We're all adapting and learning to the new world in which we live. Just take a moment and talk about some of the upside, because there's so much good that's taking place with technology in the learning world and the social world, but just a couple examples.
Oh yeah, for sure. There is so much positive and great things that are happening with technology. I mean, kids today are learning computer programming. They're making these awesome multimedia presentations and creating their own websites, and technology allows us to collaborate with one another like never before. Students can collaborate in the classroom in small groups or with others working on the same project or document simultaneously. They can do that same thing then at home, collaborating and communicating with one another, and technology just increases lots of efficiencies and allows our teachers to better know their students.
Well, and we experienced the collaboration piece. We met face-to-face earlier this week in preparation for this weekend's message and presentation. And we were together a couple of hours, but his schedule and my schedule didn't allow us to come back together face-to-face over the course of the week, so we did our work through Google Docs. What a fascinating experience that was. So he's live online as I am with him. He's in his place, I'm in my place, looking at the sermon outline and the questions and how we want to interface. And he says to me over the telephone, "Okay, I'm watching your cursor move," and I'm going, "That's creepy. Leave my cursor alone." So we're having this moment. It's just odd how you're so far apart, and yet we're working and editing this collaboratively, this document. And what's the most important thing to bring in the limited time that we have today? What a great experience that was. We learned last week about digital natives. We learned about digital immigrants. And then this week we were talking about the significance of digital footprints, and that we all have a digital footprint. Different if you're a native versus an immigrant. What is it and why is it important?
Sure. Well, basically, your digital footprint is the record of things that you've done with and through technology. And for those of us in the room as digital immigrants, our digital footprint didn't begin when we were young. You can't go back and look at all the good things and some of the mistakes we made that might have been photographed or videotaped like today's generation can. And actually, today's generation, their digital footprint begins in utero when mom posts the ultrasound picture to Instagram.
Wow, isn't that amazing?
You know, and it just goes from there. And by upper elementary, they are making their own contributions to their digital footprint with pictures and videos and so on. And so it's, I think, very important to help our kids keep those footprints clean and positive so that they really represent themselves well. When I go out and speak to students around the state, I talk to them about what I call the grandma rule, and that is that if you wouldn't, if grandma wouldn't approve of it, then you shouldn't digitize it. And I think that's, just a great reminder for our kids to check in with them every so often about, would grandma approve of, what you're doing on your phone or what you've uploaded to Vine or tweeted out or something along those lines.
Just out of curiosity, do you find grandma? It could depend on your grandmother, couldn't it?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, you might have to pick a different relative. Pick Pastor Joel. Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah. So,
how about just choose Jesus? How about
there
that?
You go.
Let's just land with Jesus.
Yeah, the true. What would Jesus do?
What would Jesus do? Yeah, very good.
College admissions counselors and employers and athletic recruiters are all looking at our digital footprints, and especially the digital footprints of youth today. So helping them really make wise decisions and represent themselves positively is an important skill we can pass on. Around our schools in Minnetonka, like many schools around the state, we have posters, which you'll see on the screen here, reminding our students to think before they post and really getting them, before they use any of those apps that you see, to think about, is this true? Is it helpful? Is it inspiring? Is it necessary? And is it kind? If you can answer all those questions, then it would be okay to go ahead and digitize that.
Yeah, that's really, really helpful. I read an article this week that indicated that 48% of employers Facebook friend their employees. Now, why would an employer want to befriend their employee? It's an interesting question. There may be various reasons, but I thought it was creepy that you were looking at my cursor. I think this is creepy as well. And how we manage this world and everything is out there and what gets seen, we do have to pay attention to it, which brings us to this issue of filters. And I talked about Turkel's comment that our communication technologies are shaping not only what we do, but who we are. And because of that, we really have to pay attention to the filters of that which is good and that which is bad. And there's all kinds of tools available to help us do that well with kids, with families, with adults. What are some of those tools?
Sure. All of our schools have filters in place that really kind of protect and keep out some of the bad stuff that's out there online. There's lots of great stuff on the internet, lots of wonderful resources at everyone's fingertips, but unfortunately there's a lot of bad stuff too. And as schools, we're required by the federal government to have a filter in place, but a lot of parents don't realize that those tools are available to them at home as well. And so one of the things that we recommend is opendns.com is a free site that you can download some software to install on your home computer. You can add your wireless router to that so that your whole Wi-Fi network will have a filter in place where you can choose what types of sites to block and kind of not only guard your heart with soldiers, like you said, but also kind of keep away from the eyes of our kids some of the content we wouldn't want them to see. Also, within cell phones, it's important today to pay attention to that internet connection because that completely bypasses your Wi-Fi network. So sitting in school, if your child has a cell phone, he or she can go right around the school filter to the nearest cell tower and get the internet, or sitting in your home, they can do the same thing. So we as parents have some options for that on our phones. We can go into our settings, and actually whether you're on a Droid device or an Apple device, you can do this. So here I'm in my phone under General. Just quick demo for restrictions on an iPhone. You can create a 4-digit passcode. I'll have to change mine now, where you can turn on or off any apps you want. This is a separate 4-digit passcode from that of your child. But where it really becomes powerful is down here, where you can choose what content to allow to be seen through that device. You can restrict apps for those ages 18 and up. You can go in and restrict song lyrics that are explicit, and even go in and limit adult content on websites. So that's just a really helpful, quick, easy tool. It takes about 30 seconds to set up and is available to any of us. Your cellular carrier doesn't provide that coverage anymore with 4G. Another option that we have is Parents and we're getting more and more options like this all the time. I've been experimenting with this new app. It's called Kirby. It allows me to, for about $7 a month, to put filters on my kids' phones, and I can structure it by the age of the child. I can see what apps they have on their phones. You can set up rules for when there's no internet connection at bedtime or something like that. And you can also go back and look here and see how much time did you spend on these different apps and things yesterday, which are great conversation starters for kids. So,
I'm sure kids love you.
yes, yes.
Doesn't he act like a digital native? You see him just flipping around in there. It's so great. And, all these external things are so helpful, but obviously when we talk about guarding our hearts, that internal filter is something as parents we need to teach our children, because, the Adam and Eve complex is real. We find a way to navigate around those screens, those filters. And guarding our heart means learning to filter your heart, because it's just right, good, noble to do, and to teach that value to our children, so important. We talk about Archibald Hart's book. He's got a great little section on what's happening in social relationships and our fragmented focus, particularly, that we're losing touch with how intrusive our technology has become, how easily accessible it is, and then also how time demanding it is in the boardroom, in the classroom, and when we go out to dinner, et cetera. And I serve on a couple of boards, and because I was coming into the series, our last board meeting in one of the organizations I was working in, there's about 30 people in the room. We have selective listening. More than half of them were on their cell phones doing other kinds of things during the board meeting, and they listen to the agenda items that are of pertinent interest to them, but otherwise they're tuned out because it's so accessible. We're not even aware of how detached we've become. What are you observing, and what would you like to say and speak into some of those challenges?
Sure. I think that's so true that over these past probably 10 years or so of smartphones that we all have seen more and more intrusion into our lives with notifications and interruptions and alerts and things like that. It's an opportune time where we can work with children and students to help them understand what it is to use technology in a balanced way and to stay focused. I started really noticing that in myself. Actually, I didn't really start noticing that till I was kind of confronted by my youngest daughter. I'm embarrassed to say that at bedtime in the evenings, as I was helping my 5-year-old brush her teeth and read bedtime stories, I often had my phone out as well. And I'd be brushing her teeth with one hand and have the phone in the other even at some points. Awful, I know. And it wasn't until she said something to me to the effect of, as we were reading a story, she said something about, Mommy always reads to me, but Daddy always has his phone. And, that just hurt. And it's really made me realize kind of how connected I am to things, and also wanting to take charge of the technology in my life. And so one of the ways I've done that is started paying attention to all these interruptions, notifications, and things like that. I think it's going to be fascinating in this coming week as the Apple Watch is released, and we may be seated in church next Sunday to people with their Apple Watch.
I'll be looking at you.
Yes, that's right. And how we manage that, because that's the whole concept of the watch is designed to take those interactions and make them into just glances. Does this warrant my attention now or not? But I think that still disconnects you from the people you're with or the task at hand. And so a couple things I've done, again, I'm just going to go into settings and just mention real quickly here, with notifications in your settings on Android or Apple devices, you have the choice to decide what gets pushed to you, what do you get alerted to. And what I've pretty much done is turned off everything for all sorts of apps except for phone calls, text messages, and calendar alerts. So for example, here in Facebook, you can choose to turn off the sounds, turn off the little badge app, the little red circle with how many new posts you've missed, having those alerts pop up on your screen. Those are all ways you can kind of cut back on those interruptions. And now this allows you to go into your device and basically choose what information you want to look at that time.
It's really fascinating to me because it reveals how needy we are, that when we get a text or we hear the ding, we just instantly want to look. Or if we haven't heard the ding, we just want to keep looking, wondering, what are people thinking about us? What are they saying about us? What do they want us to know? And is it all really that important? I think that's part of our discovery phase right now. Is it all that important? Archibald Hart also talks about that media is becoming another parent. That the combination of the smartphone effects are making our smartphones like pacifiers and security blankets and even babysitters. We're using them out of convenience. And are you seeing those same patterns in the world of education or even the social world that you find yourself living in?
Yes, I'm definitely seeing it, especially in the social world, as I see other parents. And as a parent myself, you look to other parents to see how are they handling this. What are they doing? You see the pass back effect is what it's called. I'll pass this back to you to keep you quiet, that sort of thing. At kids' sporting events, you'll often see a lot of young kids. They aren't watching their siblings play. They're on their devices. And so I think we have a great opportunity to really help our kids understand about how to balance focus and how much screen time is enough. We remember life pre-screen and pre-connection. And so tips that I pass on to families, I've got a colleague who says, be where your feet are. And they use that as a family to really kind of hold each other in check when they see someone pulling out a screen or something like that. And we try and eliminate screens from the dinner table, and that's kind of a tech-free zone. Screens in the car. We're not a family that shows movies as we're running around town, running errands. I don't think they need to have a Disney movie on. I think there's a lot of valuable conversation time that can happen in the car with your family and with your kids, and lots of opportunities for talk. So I personally also, when you talk about solitude, have been noticing lately, as I've been trying to cut back on these digital distractions, how much solitude time I don't really have if I'm always plugged in and connected, or even listening to podcasts or have the radio on in the car. And so I've actually lately started turning off the radio and not even having it on in the vehicle.
Yeah.
And just using that as some time to think and process. And when I go for runs or walks with the dog, I don't have a podcast in my ears, and so on.
Good tips. Really helpful learning for us. You mentioned a phrase that I hadn't heard of earlier this week called the digital yawn.
Yeah.
You interested in what that thing is? What's a digital
Yeah.
yawn?
A gentleman in Texas who's also in a similar position to me first coined the term that I'm aware of. And basically, you know how a yawn is contagious, that if you're in a group and someone starts to yawn, you maybe start to yawn too, or try to suppress that yawn or something. The digital yawn, he calls it, is what he started noticing, and I have too, is if you're in a group and there's a bit of a lull, the first person pulls out their phone, and pretty soon you realize I've just pulled out my phone, or maybe I have something I should look at or check right now.
It's the ripple effect.
Yeah,
Everybody just pulls out their phone.
Yeah, he also calls it no-socializing.
No-socializing, that's good.
Yeah.
Wow. You've got a cyber safety class coming here at Westwood. We got a little pointer to it. You can go to your program as well, but who should come to this?
Would love to see parents of elementary students up on through high school. If you're an empty nester and want to learn more about keeping grandchildren safe and helping them learn balance, you're certainly welcome too. We'll be talking about some of the things I've discussed here in a little more time in detail than just this short interview. And I do want to point out in the program today, underneath your sermon notes, you have a link to the same handout that we'll have at this presentation with a number of links and helpful tips for parents and families.
Includes the connection to Hart's book as well as to the TED Talk, which it's a 20-minute talk. It's well worth listening to. Isn't this fascinating? And for us to pay attention to this changing world in order to guard our hearts becomes really important. Would you join me in thanking Dave for being with us?